So I ask you, how can we make sure that U.S. weapons do not end up in the hands of the Janjaweed? How can we ensure that U.S. weapons aren't being used to murder political protesters in Sudan?
All of our partnerships on a security sense, including some that are economic, are predicated on our interests, on U.S. interests. But that's not new. That's not unique to this administration or the previous administration or back to the time of Washington. We develop partnerships because of what works best for U.S. interests.
All right, Patriots. So you just saw that quick snippet and wow, that's a perfect taste of what we're about to break down. You saw Representative Ilhan Omar going after Assistant Secretary Clark Cooper on arms sales, and she's coming in hot with some pretty wild accusations. You know the drill, same old playbook from the left. But stick around because Mr. Cooper, a true conservative, really shines in the full exchange. He doesn't let her run him over. We're about to watch the whole thing, and I'll break down exactly how he takes control and pretty much makes her entire line of questioning look, well, let's just say less than informed. Before we get to that, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you think about this kind of grandstanding in Congress. Now, let's get into the main event.
So it's no secret that, within line of what my colleague from New York said, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are brutal regimes. They export brutality. They crush democratic movements abroad directly and indirectly. I also believe that they have been funders of terrorists. And we have heard reports that they're transferring U.S. weapons to Al-Qaeda. I believe that our relationship with them in its current form is immoral, but it's not only immoral, it's counterproductive to our national security. I believe in trusting them to protect our needs and protecting us against terroristic threats is like trusting a thief to protect your shop. This administration selling them billions of dollars of weapons is dangerous and it's outrageous. Doing so is open disregard for the will of Congress and the American people, slap in the face to our democracy and our values. Twice in the last 25 years, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates have invaded Bahrain to crash democratic uprising. The Saudis actively supported the Egyptian coup in 2013. In April of this year, the United Nations finally believed they were on the verge of negotiating peace in Libya. This has instead collapsed into a civil war. Haftar has waged his bloody campaign with Saudi backing and Emirate weapons. More recently in Sudan, Hemeti visited MPS in Jeddah, and shortly after that, him and the Janjaweed immediately began murdering democratic protesters by the hundreds. It's clear that state sees Saudi hand in the crackdown. Since David Hale called MPS's brother, Khalid bin Salam, to ask him to use Saudi influence to stop the killings. This is a disturbing pattern of destabilization and totalitarianism. Backing the Saudi and the Emirates is backing war crimes and crimes against humanity. Providing them with arms is complicity. So I ask you, how can we make sure that U.S. weapons do not end up in the hands of the Janjaweed? How can we ensure that U.S. weapons aren't being used to murder political protesters in Sudan?
Congresswoman Omar, thank you. As to our partnerships, and you mentioned Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, and there are some other partners that are either developing or devolving in some cases. All of our partnerships on a security sense, including some that are economic, are predicated on our interests, on U.S. interests. But that's not new. That's not unique to this administration or the previous administration or back to the time of Washington. We develop partnerships because of what works best for U.S. interests. It doesn't preclude us, though, from holding partners accountable, not just on human rights, access to civil society, but also holding accountable on protecting our interests. And so when we're either provision of a weapon system or a capacity or a certain kind of sustainment, with that comes a relationship. So it's a long-term investment. That is what makes us unique to our adversaries.
To the question of how can we assure that this partnership can be trusted to protect us from eventually having some of our weapons end up in the hands of terrorists is my question, and making sure that it doesn't go into murdering political protesters in Sudan, because what we have seen is that our weapons have been used to assault schools, bridges, hospitals in places like Yemen. We've seen the Saudis' involvement and their footprint in Libya. We've seen their involvement and footprint in Somalia with Al-Shabaab. So what I'm asking you is, how can you assure the American people that we are not emboldening them to continue to reign their terror in destabilizing that region when we trust them to be a partner in stabilizing it?
Yeah. Saudi Arabia has been a long-time security partner in the region for almost 40 years. It does not and never has precluded us from accountability.
Okay, so we just watched the full exchange, and wow, did Clark Cooper ever deliver? I mean, seriously, what a masterclass in staying calm under fire and just laying out the facts. Rep Omar came in there with all guns blazing, throwing around words like brutal regimes, immoral, and terrorists, and trying to paint the entire U.S. foreign policy of selling arms as some kind of evil complicity. It's almost like she forgets the world existed before, 2016? Her whole argument, trusting a thief to protect your shop, come on, that's a bumper sticker slogan, not serious foreign policy analysis. It sounds good if you're trying to rally the base, but it totally ignores the complex realities of international relations. She listed off all these instances in Bahrain, Egypt, Libya, Sudan, trying to tie them all back to U.S. arms sales like it's a simple cause and effect. But here's where Cooper, bless his heart, just calmly turns the tables. He starts by reminding her that our partnerships, including with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are predicated on our interests, on U.S. interests. That's the key, folks. It's not about being best friends forever. It's about protecting American citizens and American security. And then he drops the hammer. That's not new. That's not unique to this administration or the previous administration back to the time of Washington. Boom. He instantly debunks her entire premise that this is some new, nefarious Trump administration policy. He reminds her and us that this is about long-standing strategic alliances for national security. When she keeps pushing, trying to get him to assure the American people that our weapons won't end up in the wrong hands, Cooper wisely frames arms sales as a long-term investment that comes with a relationship. It's not just handing out guns, it's about influence, training, and building capabilities with partners who do serve our strategic interests, even if they aren't perfect. And then, his closing point before the video cuts off, about Saudi Arabia being a long-term security partner for almost 40 years, and that this has never precluded us from accountability. That's the mic drop. It highlights how simplistic her view is. These relationships are decades old, built on mutual interests, and accountability is always part of the equation. Honestly, Rep, Omar came across as completely uninformed about the history and strategic necessity of these partnerships. She's more interested in political grandstanding and scoring points than understanding the geopolitical chessboard. Cooper, on the other hand, was the picture of a seasoned official, calmly explaining the enduring principles of American foreign policy and exposing the shallowness of her questions. He didn't get flustered. He didn't raise his voice. He just explained the reality, and in doing so, he made her accusations look, frankly, pretty foolish. That's how you handle the radical left, folks with facts, history, and a steady hand.